The footage you are about to see is the master reel from JT's Horror Discussion's first and last special late night show discussing the 2024 horror film Late Night with the Devil. This disturbing footage and the disturbed people in it has been edited down for time and to fit your television screens. Enjoy at your own risk. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're going to kick off our show talking about the new hit horror film, Late Night with the Devil. Ooh, very controversial. Now stay tuned for our special show right after these messages. Aww. Now I decided to do this one first just because this is the best out of all the new releases I watched. I think this movie is excellent. Now for anyone who hasn't seen Late Night with the Devil yet, it is on Shudder. It's an IFC film, which I love IFC. It's also found footage-esque, but more so in like the faux documentary, mockumentary style that we've seen in like Lake Mungo, Hell House LLC, The Tunnel. It goes on, it's been done before. But the way this movie captures the feel of the 70s talk show, it is so well done, and it really feels like you're watching a talk show that was competing for Carson in the 70s. I don't know if it was just my mood when I first watched this. I've watched this twice now. The most fun I've had watching a new horror release, I don't even know how long. Like at least a year plus. This was such a fun ride watching this movie. And I don't know if it helped the fact that I never watched trailers. I try to go into movies completely blind, so I didn't really know anything about this except that it was getting some hype and that it's like a fake TV talk show set in the 70s and some paranormal demonic stuff happens on air. That's pretty much all I knew going into this. And even knowing that, I was on the edge of my seat watching this movie the first time. Now, the talk show host, I always forget this actor's name, but he is excellent in most things I've seen him in, but he is fantastic in this movie. David Dastmalchian, is that how you say it? He nailed this whole role of just the desperate TV talk show host. All his humor works for me. All his sincere and serious scenes work for me. Everything in this movie pretty much worked for me 100%. And that's why I'm going to turn this into a whole spoiler discussion, because I need to talk spoilers about this movie. So if you haven't seen it, it sounds like something that you'd enjoy. I wouldn't even limit this to found footage fans, since it's not your typical found footage movie. This is more, like I said, like a fake faux documentary, but it's more of just like a fake hour-and-a-half long TV show. Now, before we talk spoilers, there is one thing I want to address with this movie. There's been a decent amount of criticism on this movie for its use of artificial intelligence. Everything that I was able to read up on this movie and find on it regarding the AI, they use 3 still shots, which are used in between the acts or segments, if you will, on the talk show here. I'm guessing it's just the signs that say like Night Owl, the name of the show, and we'll be back soon. And then the artist ended up doing more work on those AI generated images. Now David Dastmalchian has spoke out on this. He's pretty much stuck to their story, the directors, that those are the only 3 AI images that they used in this movie. So get ready for a hot take regarding the AI that I'm sure will piss some people off, but that's nothing new here. If this entire film was written and somehow put out by AI, after most of the films I've been watching this year, and just dreadful stuff like Imaginary and Night Swim from Blumhouse, those 2 movies, I say get as many Mr. and Mrs. AIs as you possibly can and have them start churning out movies. Because if this is the level of fun and creativeness that's coming from AI, we need more AI making movies stat. I mean immediately. Start getting movies out there in droves from AI if this is going to be the result. Now, I should clarify, do I think this is a perfect movie? No. Do I think this is a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10? No. But this is my favorite horror film of the year so far. Just for the fun factor alone, that's why I keep specifying this is the most fun watch that I've had in a long time. Even if there are a few nitpicks with this, as a whole, this movie is just a blast to watch. And isn't that why we watch movies? Like, first and foremost, for entertainment? I do. And I was thoroughly entertained through this movie. The first 10 minutes... Thanks, Gus. 10 minutes of this movie is set up so well and fast to set up this whole story and to get you really into the 70s headspace. It tells you all about Jack Delroy and how he started this show, and it's been competing with Carson for years. They have his wife on in a special episode, and that was the best ratings that the show got in its 4 or 5 year run. It still was a point below Carson. They show a whole little montage of how the country was in the late 60s, early 70s, just to give you, again, the headspace to be in for this talk show. And they make you sincerely care about Delroy's character, and this is all within 10 minutes of the start of this movie. And then after the 10-minute mark or so is when we start the episode, the last episode of this show. That didn't go too well, but yeah, it's rare for me to care about a character and be invested in a story so quickly in a movie. They fire off the whole history of this show, Night Owls. It's been around since 71. This is Halloween of 77 that this last episode takes place on. Now, they throw in here an important piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure out the ending of this movie. They say that Jack Delroy hung out at this place in the woods that basically, like, all the elite of the country and the world go to. And that there's been rumors of satanic rituals and sacrifices. Now, they throw this in here very, very quickly. Even if you know the premise for this movie, and just from the name, it could be a little obvious where they're going with it. But this movie, for me, is not really about any twists or anything like that. You pretty much know what's going to happen here. You know this television broadcast is going to go hellaciously wrong. I just wanted to see how it got there. We also see very briefly in the highest rated episode that this show had to this date, Jack's ex-wife, who passed away from lung cancer, even though she was not a smoker, which I think is a clever little detail they threw in there also. Now, later on, we find out that Minnie is the nickname or a little pet name that he had for Madeline, his wife. I just noticed this now, but in that clip of the show that she came on before she passed away 2 weeks later, she whispers to him, like, "I love you, Jack." And he whispers back, and there's no subtitles for this, but it looks clear as day that he says Minnie. That he says, "I love you, Minnie," not Madeline. So leading up to this final episode called Late Night with the Devil, Jack ended up disappearing for a brief amount of time after his wife died. He was in full-on grieving mode. Then he comes back, and the ratings are in a free fall. It's the gap between Carson's ratings and Night Owls is getting bigger and bigger. They show Jack in a few episodes after he came back where he's visibly getting pissed off at guests on the show, and he's like having little meltdowns, like, "We'll be back, but you're not coming back." He was breaking down on camera here. So for this Halloween show, he has to really pull out all the tricks. And I love all the characters in this movie. We have the first guest who comes on, Chris Stew, who is hilarious. That whole segment with him is great. When they just really focus in on the bullshit that these psychics and mediums use. Picking a name, then hoping that an audience member responds to it. And then we get the whole little gag with the plant that they put in the audience. He starts fucking with Chris Stew when he says, "Your wife passed away." And he says, "Yeah, if you call it that, she ran off with the next door neighbor 5 years ago." And the way the actor who plays Chris Stew starts getting more and more agitated, it's hilarious. Gus is playing with the theremin instrument, which I've always wanted one of those. Let's put it this way. If David Dastmalchian was actually a talk show host and this show was real, I'd be watching the show every night. I can't praise enough how well he does in this movie at making you feel simultaneously bad for this guy, for what he's gone through. But as the movie goes on and you find out exactly the cause of this and the reason this is all happening, I don't know, you still feel for him in some way. So he just really nailed this likable talk show host with a questionable, dark past. Like this whole little scene here when he starts pretty much thanking the audience and that they're the most important people for this show and that they welcomed him back and they supported him through all of this. And then the woman screams out, "We love you, Jack." He starts tearing up. Just great stuff from him. So then we have our first guest on the show, Chris Stew. He's great with the whole gag that he only has one name. And then just the whole performance he puts on, both in the actual movie and the actor here. He does a great job. If the humor here, when he's getting heckled by the guy in the audience that's a plant from the studio, if it doesn't work for you, I get it. It's purposely very 70s comedy. The way he's just so intense, like Peterson. And the fact this guy remembers the names that he's making up and hears in the audience later when they say, well, yeah, it was Peterson. He goes, it was Peterman. Great character. Oh, that's right. Quickly before he continues on with his show, Chris Stew, you see Jack go up into the audience and he's holding the phone for the plant. Barry, his name is. He makes it very clear. But then he starts talking to the person dressed as a skeleton, which is pretty heavily implied at the end that I guess there's a few of these people in the audience that belong to this, cult. But we'll get there. All right, this line from Chris Stew is hysterical. When he goes up to the mother and daughter and he starts saying, Edward, and they say, Edmund was my brother. He goes, yes, Edmund. And he says that Edmund, he took his own life. Quite recently, too. They say 5 years ago, and he says, yes, but it feels like only yesterday. That's too funny. So after Chris Stew's whole smoke and mirrors routine, they're about to go to a break, and he actually starts getting a message from the spirit of Jack's ex-wife, Minnie. Now, we don't know this at the time, unless for some reason you can read lips and you saw him say, I love you, Minnie, and you can connect the dots here. But I don't think many people did that. But he's in agony, holding his head, and he almost lets it slip. It sounds like he's about to say, no, this is real. But he just says, no, this is... then he stops talking for a second. He's screaming out, who will accept this message? And then Jack hysterically comes in trying to keep with Chris Stew's earlier bullshit show that he put on. It's like, maybe it's not Minnie, maybe it's a name that sounds like Minnie, like Mandy. And then Gus is like, my cousin's name is Molly. He's like, it's Minnie! And then right before the lights flicker and shut down for a second in a very dramatic way, he lets out this little tidbit that we revisit later when we get more of the story, that he sees an unmarried man with a wedding ring, which we find out later is Jack, since he never got rid of his wedding ring after Madeline died. One nitpick I can throw here, the behind the scenes. Now, they say at the beginning of this movie that what you're about to see is the master tape of the broadcast and some behind the scenes footage. So they try to cover that aspect, since this is all shot in a found footage way. But they kind of break that a little later when Jack goes backstage and he's having a very private conversation with the producer or his friend Leo. I mean, who's recording this conversation? Do they want anyone recording this conversation? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. So, does the found footage format hold up for those little behind the scenes? Not really, if you really scrutinize them. But at this point in the movie, I was having such a blast already that it didn't matter to me at all. And then we see, I'm guessing this is what, I don't know if this is the exact AI image, but we see a little cutaway card that says Night Owls will be back, with Jack Delroy as the whole skyline of New York City, because this takes place in New York. I mean, UBC is the company. It's very obvious it's NBC. But if that's all that AI did in this movie, was generate some images, still images in between, breaks on this talk show, come on, what the are people getting all crazy about? And like I said, even if you missed it with all the woos and stuff from the crowd, I don't give a shit if the whole movie was written by AI. So then we have the second guest, Mr. Carmichael Haig, who I'm almost positive is based on a real person. If somebody knows more details on that, let me know in the comments, because I'm interested. But I'm pretty sure he's based off a real guy who was a magician and sleight-of-hand artist and completely skeptical about everything paranormal-wise, psychic-wise, all that stuff. And he started a paranormal group that would try to debunk all these claims. And he had a check of like, I don't know, $100,000 or a few $100,000 that he would give out if anybody can actually reproduce in a controlled setting any of their claims. And nobody ever won the check. It's killing me who this guy is. Someone let me know. And he's a great character. I love everything from him too. I love how he starts pointing out all the tricks that these psychics use and how he really just publicly annihilates Christou's character on this show, and he gets up ready to leave. And this is where we get the little bombshell from Jack that Christou might have been telling the truth with that last spirit coming into his mind with Minnie, and he says that was his nickname for her and shows the wedding ring. And I love how the guy points out half the people in the audience are wearing wedding rings, and the news of your wife passing was not a secret. Most people can know about it. So this guy is skeptical to the extreme, but yet he is the first person on his knees ready to suck the devil's dick to get into his good graces in hell. Also, I love the little jab that he throws in at the Warrens. Where he says, I invited my friends the Warrens to come, but easily scared. Then I guess Christou conjures up a bit of Sam Raimi, because he ends up just projectile vomiting all over Carmichael Haig. He's on the floor, they cut to a break, and then they end up taking this guy away to Mount Sinai. And Christou dies. He dies on the ambulance ride over there. And they don't find out till a little bit later. But poor Christou, man, I was going to get tickets. And I say all the time, as much as I love conspiracy theories and aliens and cryptids and all that stuff, I'm still a very big skeptic. I want to believe, but I'm skeptical to the extreme too. So I would probably be like this guy, going up to Jack in the commercial break saying, that was great thinking with you and the ex-wife gag. Like, you probably set all this up, and I would think that through this entire show. You're in a television studio. So just think of all the effects work and stuff that they could pull off, even if it is like much better than you would think they'd be able to do. I would still be thinking that. I would be just like this guy, thinking that Jack set up everything, especially when you know that this show is tanking and that they really need to pull their ratings up. Otherwise, this is going to be the end for them. So you can absolutely see them faking this for ratings. And he even mentions Carmichael that he reads the trades, so he knows the shape of the show. But unfortunately for Car here, he doesn't realize how desperate Jack actually is. So here we get another name drop of the Grove, which is the name of the elite getaway cult, whatever you want to call it, that Jack was rumored to visit. So Carmichael Haig knows about the place, so this must be a decent-sized rumor, or truth in this case, that goes around the entertainment industry, just like now. So then we cut back to the show. After a brief little still of an owl on a... Again, I don't know if this is one of the still images made by AI, but it's an owl that says Happy Halloween for owl. Oh my god, let's boycott this film because of the image of an owl that wasn't created by an actual person. So they're live again. Carmichael starts saying that it was just controlled regurgitation. It's an old vaudeville trick to try to point out Christou being a fraud. So then they bring out Lily and her doctor, Dr. June. And she wrote a book on Lily called Conversations with the Devil. Now, even though it's called Late Night with the Devil, and the book is called Conversations with the Devil, they make it abundantly clear that this isn't the actual devil. That Lily is possessed by a demon called Abraxas. And Carmichael even says on the show that he was named after his favorite spell, and she says abracadabra, and he says, you're a clever girl. And the whole opening video that they show on Dr. June's studies and stuff, and we find out that Lily was 10 years old when she was rescued from this place, this cult that worshipped Abraxas, and supposedly there was like child sacrifices and all type of devilish shit that happened there. And Dr. June ends up pretty much adopting Lily as family. So she's not possessed by the actual devil. right? Like, that's how I take it from all the name drops of Abraxas. I guess Late Night with Abraxas just didn't have the same cachet as Late Night with the Devil for the title, so they went with that. For those watching the premiere, we're only a half hour into this movie, so be careful. Be careful of what? The length. I don't know the actress's name, but she gives a great performance as Lily here. She is genuinely creepy and sweet at the same time. When they take a break and she's just staring into the camera, like dead stare into the camera behind her, that's effective. And this is what I mean with this movie being more of just the watch itself and the journey than the destination, because you know this bitch is possessed. You know she is. The second she comes out, even before that, just throwing this movie on, if you read a synopsis, you know this girl is possessed. So you're not looking for any real twists or reveals here. It just plays out the way that it does. And I don't know, it either works for you or it doesn't. So then we have them off the air, and they want to do a demonstration of Dr. June calling out the demon from Lily on live TV. You can't deny it's a brilliant idea. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that can happen is she puts on a good show as a charlatan. The best that can happen is you actually conjure up a demon on live TV. Your name is infamous. So infamous that they might wait decades after the actual show to show us what actually happened. But I love the whole conversation backstage between the producer and Jack when he lets him know that Christou died on the way to Mount Sinai. Spouting, that's what it's called, the controlled regurgitation. And he said, no, I thought that was part of his act. It was spouting. He's like, well, then he was spouting from everywhere. And the people couldn't get it under control. He's dead. Great line. But Dr. June is getting a little bit of cold feet, and she says that the most important thing to her is Lily's well-being, and that this isn't a good idea. But as desperate as Jack is for this show to finally, succeed and maybe take over Carson in the ratings, he's pushing for this gung-ho. But she ends up agreeing. Then they end up going live, strapping Lily to a chair. Then she brings out the demon inside her on live TV. And again, here with the conversation with the producer and Jack backstage, they're talking about Christou dying. Then Jack specifically says nobody can find out about this, especially Gus. But yet they're being filmed by a camera guy. So again, that doesn't really fit the format or make sense. But it doesn't matter for me. It's something I can ignore, and there are a decent amount of found footage movies or fake documentaries like this that have the same issue. But I'm able to look past it. And we're back, live. I love all the shit that Carmichael gives them, saying that they're charlatans and that all these people are stupid for believing any of this. Now, she does address what she thinks the demon inside of Lily is. And when the name Abraxas is brought up, she says that I think it's more of a minor deity that serves Abraxas. Now, I take this that she's wrong, right? That's just her little hypothesis. At the end, we find out this is actually Abraxas. Abraxas on the back of a dragon, baby. There's like 1 in a million people who will get that reference. Carmichael with the sacrificial dagger, and he's pretending that he can't stop it, and he says you're a whole bunch of suggestible people, and he says handy to know, which I think I didn't catch that the first time, but I think that's cool, because then when we see him hypnotize the whole audience later, that's what he was referring to. I love the whole character of Carmichael. Like, the more I watch it, I just love his dickhead character. Now, Lily calls what's inside of her Mr. Wriggles, which, I mean, yeah, it's very Captain Howdy, but whatever. It wriggles its way into her mind and then wriggles its way out. Fine, I mean, cool name. Then they seemingly have another issue caused by Mr. Wriggles, with the theremin going off on its own, and then Greg Carmichael walking up and saying it's feeding through your PA system. Like, he's debunking everything. But he doesn't know how wrong he is, because Lily says, no, it was Mr. Wriggles, and she's telling the truth. And we'll be back after a special break from our sponsors. Have to clean the dishes, but don't ever feel loved in the process? Get Sensual Dish Soap. That's right. Make the dishes a good time for you and the soap. Sensual Dish Soap. So because Lily says that Mr. Wriggles is here, like in the studio, in the audience, wherever he's lurking, can we invite him on the show? That's Jack's brilliant idea. And again, it's a great idea. June is heavily against this, saying, I told you, like, it's too risky. All the audience members, the cameras, and everyone is egging her on. The audience, everyone wants to see this. Lily's completely fine with this idea, and that's because Mr. Wriggles is fine with this idea because Abraxas craves attention, as Carmichael says. He loves an audience. This is the best place for it. So Dr. June starts a summoning ritual by strapping down Lily to a chair and then trying to evoke the demon out of her. I love the character of Gus, like Jack's sidekick on the show, like Andy Richter to Conan. He comes up during the break before they summon the demon out of Lily. He's a full believer. He says, you got to stop meddling with things you don't understand. It's all that Mr. Wriggles, isn't it? He's losing it. And Jack just tells him to keep this to himself. He's trying to save the show. The whole possession scene on live TV here with Dr. June and Lily, I think is great. Like, I think they did a great job here with the practical effects, with the makeup effects on her, with her demonic voice, the audience members chiming in, oh my god, I'm so scared, is that the devil? All of that is great. And this is where Lily, or the demon inside Lily, drops the hint that this is happening because of Jack, because of something that he did in his past at the Grove, that whole elite cult commune, whatever you want to call it, because she says that they have met before by the tall trees, and we see the intro clip of the Grove. It's all in the woods, so it makes sense. Okay, there is a tiny detail in this scene that I absolutely love. The fact that they paid attention to details with this, that they are on a live show, and you would have the censors there ready to hit that censor button. So right when she's possessed, Lily, and she starts singing the song that Jack and June go up the hill to each other's brains out, the first time she says it, you hear the curse word, you hear the second time she repeats it, you hear it bleeped out. The fact they threw that little detail in there just made me giddy. And that summoning ends with Lily levitating in her chair. And everyone's freaking out. Everyone is convinced at this point, except for Carmichael Haig. And he wants to debunk everything they just did, and they cut to a commercial break, saying he'll get his chance. And again, the happy Halloween screen, oh my god, boycott. I also really like the usage of black and white for when they're off air. When they're on air, it's full color, and then all the behind-the-scenes stuff is in black and white. I don't know, it adds something to it. So Carmichael finds out backstage that Chris 2 actually died. And all the stuff that he's been calling out, all the tricks and the things that these people use to make it look real, he was wrong about this. This guy actually died. So then Leo, the producer, comes over and breaks the news to Jack. Says, yeah, we're back. Like, the show is back. And no shit, they just conjured a demon on live TV. So they go back live, and Carmichael gets his chance to debunk everything that they just witnessed. That it wasn't a real possession, wasn't a real summoning, there's no demon inside this girl, that it was mass hypnosis. And he sits down with Gus, the little Andy Richter, and he starts hypnotizing him. And there's some interactivity here, which reminded me of, like, Incantation from last year, the year before that, Asian film. Not hypnosis, but there's similar interactivity in that movie. Because when I'm watching this for the first time, you're looking at Haig's little clock and the hypnosis thing going round and round. He's telling you to look at it. I'm looking at it. Maybe I get hypnotized too. And he starts asking Gus about his morbid fear of worms. And then I just love how this whole scene plays out. Great practical effects when he's ripping apart his stomach and the worms are coming out. Then we get the big ass worm that breaks through his face and is sticking. Great body horror here. And I love how Carmichael acts like he's shocked, like this isn't supposed to be happening. And then we find out this is all just hypnosis, and that we were supposed to be hypnotized as well. That's clever. I gotta give it to them, because it makes you think the first watch, is this really happening because of Mr. Wriggles? Or is this actually the hypnosis? And they toy with our expectations of which is happening pretty well in just a few minute time frame. Carmichael says that everyone was hypnotized. I'm pretty sure I got most people in the audience, some of the viewers at home. Again, clever. Then I love Gus's line after he's like, how'd my shirt end up like undone? And he's acting all bewildered. He has no idea what just happened. And Jack says to him, you had worms all over you. And he just casually says, oh, I hope not, I hate worms. And I love how they play back the tape live on TV to see that this guy's really, really that good at hypnosis and that they really were all hypnotized. And they play the tape back. No worms, nothing like that. This guy really hypnotized everybody. So then Lily gives the great idea to let's play back her segment to prove that it's not a joke. That's not a trick. This woman did not hypnotize Lily or anybody in the studio. And I think it's a great recurring gag that they mentioned Miss Cleo is supposed to do the musical number for like a while now on this show, and she gets bumped off again because they can't leave everybody hanging here, like wondering what actually happened. So then they play back the tape of Lily's possession. So Jack ends up seeing something that catches his eye on the tape, and he tells them to play it back very slowly, frame by frame. I don't know how he saw this. I mean, yeah, I guess subliminal messaging works all the time, so I guess he could see a frame, something just pop up. But they go through frame by frame, and we see the spirit or angel, whatever you want to call it, of his dead wife right beside him. And he is visibly shattered. Like, he plays this so well in this scene. He is at a loss for words, because he knows he didn't do this. He didn't set this up, so he knows it's real. Carmichael still doesn't believe, and I still wouldn't either. Until what's about to happen happens, then I would be a believer. He starts saying, it's cynical, it's depraved, but it's genius that you guys set all this up. Then we finally get to see the demon here, and just chaos everywhere in the studio. Now, people who don't like the CGI here, I get it. I really do. Maybe not the best decision, because there are practical effects in here. Lily starts, like, electricity's going through her, then she just gets suspended in the air like this. There is a practical effect. When her head splits open, that's absolutely practical. And it looks just like John Carpenter's The Thing. It looks like the blood test scene with Palmer when his head splits apart. Very good. I don't know. I don't mind the CGI. I like how all of this looks. Again, maybe not the best direction to go, but I'm fine with it. I think it looks fine for digital effects put over practical stuff. Gus gets his neck snapped in an instant, and he crashes through the table. And like I said, Carmichael, he just gets on his knees. He's like, I'm ready to do all your unholy bidding. She says abracadabra and lights his ass ablaze. After he holds up the check for $500,000, because I guess Abraxas just proved without a shadow of a doubt it's real. Then I love Dr. Jude. She tries, controlling Lily with her little talisman, and it wraps around her neck, brings her in the air, slits her throat open. So there are some good practical effects in the end here. The CGI is mostly contained to just Lily, like being all electric and shooting electricity off, which how are you going to do that practically? So it makes sense why they chose this. The CGI is just going to either work for you or it doesn't. And I think it looks pretty good. Then we have the actual ending, which I've talked to some friends who have seen this. Some don't care for it. Some think it's fine. I think it's fine. Like, it's not the greatest ending. Probably the weakest part of the movie here is the ending. So Gus's neck is snapped. He's dead. Dr. June's dead. Carmichael's eviscerated to ashes, and this is all on the main stage. So then Jack starts having a bunch of hallucinations brought on, I'm guessing, by Abraxas, the demon, getting inside his head. And he sees some memories, and we see him signing his contract, and then we see him with his sick wife. But it is fitting for the film. He's this desperate talk show host, so he ended up making some pact with the devil, or a demon in this case, at the Grove, that elite getaway place, in order to further his career. What he didn't know is the sacrifice he'd have to make is losing his wife, which I said she was not a smoker. So I like that little detail they threw in there, that she's not a smoker. She shouldn't have lung cancer. It happens, yeah. But it's much more rare than people who are smokers getting lung cancer. So that kind of makes it hit home a little more that, yeah, she really got some shit she didn't deserve because of him making this deal with the quote-unquote devil. We'll just call it the f***ing devil with 2 minutes left in this. So Jack starts having a hallucination that his wife is there dying in her bed in front of him. And she asks him to put her out of her suffering, to kill her. So he grabs the sacrificial dagger, which is there on the table that Dr. June had earlier, and ends up stabbing her in the chest. But then we cut to the stage of the show, and we find out that Jack is stabbing and killing Lily, the girl. And there's all the dead bodies of everyone I mentioned on the stage, and he's just standing there as it pans out, saying, "Dreamer here awake," which is the same words that Carmichael used on Gus when he did the whole hypnosis thing. So what does that mean? I don't know. I take it as just he can't believe everything he's witnessed, and he's just hoping that maybe he's hypnotized again, and this will wake him out of this hell that he pretty much created for himself trying to further his career. It's a great movie. This movie is such a blast. This is the third time now I've sat through it. That almost never happens. The last time I remember watching a movie 3 times in a short span was X and Pearl. Now, I'm not putting this movie anywhere near the level I hold those movies to, but this is absolutely my favorite horror movie of the year so far. It is just a fun fucking movie. And for it to stand up for 3 watches in a short amount of time and still be pretty fun watching all of this, I think they made something special here. I think this is the best use of the mockumentary, faux documentary, found footage-esque format since the original Hell House LLC, which is the early 2010s, maybe even since Lake Mungo, and that's 2008. So those are some bold claims, I know, but I can't think of any other found footage or found footage-esque films in recent years that top this for me. I think this is just great through and through. If you got issues with the AI, I don't know what to tell you. Go watch something else. Sure, it has some flaws. There's some things I can nitpick out of this. For the most part, though, it's an excellent film. So, Late Night with the Devil, we conclude our broadcast here. Abigail should be next. Take care, everybody.